I want to introduce you Nakia Malesio, senior faculty member at Georgia Tech University.
Thank you, thank you. Super excited to be here, and I just want to thank the panel and the other panels. We're going to have a bit of a switch because we don't have enough chairs up here, so there's more people to the panel. If you're counting through the slides and say, okay, well, there's more people, so they're going to be coming after a little bit in that regard. But welcome to this session. Hopefully you get the opportunity to really see and hear the passion of these entrepreneurs, and we're just going to try to make it as conversational as possible. But what I like to do is share a little bit of things that kind of set a little bit of context in that regard. But before I do that, I want to acknowledge my other colleague, Paul, who is in the room, who also works at Georgia Tech with me. I'm not sure where he is. There he is. And so he's out of the Office of Commercialization as well, too. And true rock star in that regard. So any questions we can't answer, send them all to him. No, I'm just kidding. In that regard. So let's jump right into it. So again, I'd like to set a little bit of context before we jump into the conversation around commercialization. And we're going to talk about IP, and we were going to talk about it from the perspective of those who have IP, licensed IP, built startups around it, because sometimes you think when you have an idea and you're trying to build an innovation or build a startup, or you have a company, you have access to IP at universities and labs that can help shorten that design sprint or that R&D sprint for you, and that could put you in the pathway of getting non-dilutive funding and things and mechanisms such as that. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that and again have some conversations about it. So excuse the nerdy talk if we get into that. I do love nerdy talk, and we're going to hear from some of the panelists and some of the technologies and innovations that they're working on. But before I do that, let's go ahead and set a little bit of context. I always come from this perspective is that I believe this: the world needs scientists more than ever before. And I say that from the lens of academia, but I say this from the lens that when we think about the next 2 decades of innovation and we think about the next 2 decades of the global challenges that we're going to face, it's going to require scientists and engineers more than ever before. What does that mean? That doesn't mean you have to be a scientist and an engineer, but what that does mean is that there is IP that's generated that oftentimes sit at our university labs or sits on the shelf. And sometimes you all are doing business activities that could leverage IP that can help accelerate your business and push it in a completely different level. The reason why I want to share this is because I believe firmly we're at this place that where entrepreneurs, we're at the intersection of entrepreneurship and research. And we're seeing more than ever this collide between the business world, research world, and entrepreneurship, because we're trying to create new industries, new economies, and new opportunities for us to address some of these global challenges, but also create new business opportunities. And when you think of something like biotech or aerospace or these industries, it's not so much just the technology itself, but they service multiple industries. And sometimes some of you, again, have innovations that intersect with these industries, but you have a product or a service or something that you can offer. Again, but we're going to be talking about IP as we leverage it. And the reason I'm sharing this is because when we think about the context of lab to market, is typically what we talk about in terms of IP. It's really about how do we take user fundamental basic research and how do we get it from a university or a laboratory, and how do we get it to a place that where it can be commercialized. Oftentimes, the IP does require a little bit more development once it leaves the universities, but it is an opportunity for you to create new wealth and new opportunities in ways that differentiate and have the ability to scale. How many of you have heard of Siri? How many of you have an iPhone? How many of you don't? I feel sorry for you. But we're going to have to figure out how to get you converted in that regard, okay? So Siri was, right? So Siri was, it actually started out of a DARPA lab that was designed for heads-up display for fighter pilots to be on command, to help fighter pilots be able to communicate and understand dashboard and understand what was the payload that they had on their aircraft, to be able to communicate with the onboard systems, and to be able to make it seamless as they're in the middle of combat for it to be autonomous in a sense, right? Now, of course, that was the application, but it never really made it out of the DARPA lab, and it eventually sat on the shelf for a few years, and then until Apple discovered it and rolled it into its application into the iPhone, and then it became a useful IP. And there's many things that companies use today that you think is their proprietary IP, but it's IP that they license from other institutions or labs to help accelerate their business. And so, again, you don't have to be a scientist or an engineer. You just have to have the ability, a business case, and an opportunity and passion to be able to license your innovation. Because when we think about having national and societal impact, this is what IP is about. This is what commercialization is about. It's about how do we create new industries and how do we drive innovation. But what does this mean for you? We're seeing this collide like more than ever of public and private institutions working together to figure out how do we spark new innovation. That's the purpose and the theme of this, right? Together in innovation. And when we think about together in innovation, this is an opportunity to figure out how do we collide all these worlds together. And when we say how do we collide all these worlds together, we're going to talk about SBIR funding, we're going to talk about IP, and we're going to talk about how these individuals were able to build amazing rock star companies along with our additional panel as we move before. But again, it takes an incredible amount of effort to move innovation to a place where it's successful. And most of the world that I sit in is this: how do I figure out to translate science and technology into a commercial product? How do we de-risk the innovation to do that? The good thing with IP is that you get the opportunity to take $2 to $10 million worth of work, license it, and then get to make $100 to $1 billion worth of profit off of it, right? So say cha-ching. Right? Okay, that's the power of leveraging IP in that regard. And so we're going to talk about that in that regard. And there isn't a sector in this world in any type of innovation. When we think of IP, and when we think of research, and we think of these technologies, it covers a plethora of industries. And don't think that your business does not intersect. And it's important that you spend time meeting with SBDC, SCORE, SBA, our office, Georgia Tech, MEP, all these organizations that are designed to help you think through your design and business sprint, because there are some sets of activities that you may be doing that may need to be protected, that there's some proprietary process that you have that might need to be protected. And so again, let's figure out how do we have that conversation. And as I come to a close here, I want to say this, and I want to say this in context of SBIR dollars and relate that back to IP. And Connie here, who is one of our SBIR experts, and we'll talk about what this means, and I want to unpack this. But I'm unpacking this from the lens of a phase 1, phase 2 reviewer for a lot of the federal agencies. And what I specifically see is part of what we're looking at also is the strength of the IP. Is this something that can be commercialized? Can they build a business out of this? And what we have found is that 14% without strong IP have a likelihood of being successful. Those with strong IP have a 2 to 3 times more likely higher chance of being more successful if you have strong IP, meaning you do not have to be a scientist or an engineer. If you have strong IP, you can get access to non-dilutive dollars that can help you expand that IP beyond its current state, whether that's you building an SBIR or whether you're taking that IP, being a non-scientist, doing an STTR, and working with a scientist to help explore that innovation beyond its current capacity. So with that, Venture Lab, this is what we do. We're about how do we move innovation to the next level here at Georgia Tech. And me and my colleague Paul, we work in the Office of Commercialization at Georgia Tech, and our responsibility, in addition to teaching and all the other research stuff that we do, is to work with our faculty to help them do the very thing that we're going to have a discussion about this today. And so that's what we do at Venture Lab. And so if you want to know more about Venture Lab and the Office of Commercialization at Georgia Tech, just go to venturelab.godtech.edu, and you can learn more about that. So with that, let's jump into our panel as a little bit of context. And so we're going to go ahead and first start off with AJ here. Could you provide a brief overview of your company and describe your technology, and just tell us a little bit about who you are, and then we'll have everyone else and we'll jump into it.
First of all, I would like to thank Deepak, Kyle, and SBA for putting this amazing program. I wish something like this was there about 5 or 10 years ago. I will tell you why in my answer to that question that Nakia asked. So my name is Ajay Hode. I'm a co-founder and CEO of a company called Annovient. By the way, Kyle, we do have the registered trademark for this Annovate name, by the way. We just got it last month. So I've been in healthcare for about 25 years. By the way, I'm a scientist by heart. I have worked on all the way from the lab to bringing the product to the market in the last 25 years of my working experience in the consumer as well as in mostly in the healthcare. So in 2017, I'll give a little bit of, make it more conversation, Nakia, so that people understand. In 2017, I was still part of the corporate world, and at that time, FDA, NIH, and CDC had done market research. You say, FDA did market research? How would that happen? So they were trying to understand as to why there are fewer pediatric devices in the marketplace, and what are the pediatric surgeons or the clinicians are saying. So the survey result came back loud and clear that there are about 2/3 of the people in the pediatric world, they were looking for some breakthrough innovations. And that's one key point. And being in healthcare, being in the corporate world, I knew that big companies typically they don't invest a whole lot of money into the neonate or pediatric market for all the right reasons, because it's all about return on the investment. But one thing I realized, along with my co-founder who is not here in the room, is that there are about 40,000 children born in the United States with some defect in their heart. There's a tiny machine in everybody's body that pumps the blood to the rest of the body. And there are 40,000 children born every year with some defect in their heart. And there are about 1.5 million children born every year globally with some defect in their heart, something that needs to be fixed, either repaired or replaced. So there's no device. So that's second input that I had. But then knowing the problem and having passion is one thing, but where is the solution is going to come from? And I would say, Nakia, I was lucky that I had a little bit of access or insight about as to what my friend and co-founder of this company in bioengineering department in Clemson had been working on. He had a technology that's something that was very exciting. So that was still in the early infancy stage. They had 2 patents, one in 2016 and one in 2017. I said, I think this is a time for me to take a chance and see if this technology that he's been working on can be used for fixing this issue that I'm talking about. So in a simplistic way, what technology does is basically you take the xenograft from animals, you take out all the animal cells, you treat with the secret sauce that came from Clemson, that they had the IP, and you use that technology to make the part that you need to fix your heart part. Heart, it could be a heart wall, it could be conduit, it could be tube, it could be vessels. So I knew the problem, I knew there's a potential solution, so decided to license the technology from Clemson University. I will get into as to what it took to get the technology, but fast forward, I am glad to tell you that it's been about 6 years, it has been a fantastic journey, and we have made a great progress with the help from many people, including the funding from NIH. So we gotten so far 5 grants, total equaling about $5.5 million. We also have a few investors in the company, and we've been working with the broad ecosystem, all the way from the hospitals to the universities, to the incubators, to many mentors, that a couple of them are here, next to left and right here. And there are many well-wishers. So I would just pause there, and I will certainly look for a company, a question. But let me say one thing. So the same technology can be used not only to make the cardiovascular devices for the pediatric, but can also be used for making the heart or any other products for the adults and many other components in the fixing the parts in the body. So that's our company and my technology journey.
Thank you, AJ. And Connie, can you explain your role at ATDC and just an overview of your role in terms of the SBIR, STTR program, and just how you help faculty and researchers in that regard?
Sure. Everybody hear me? There we go. So I'll speak a little bit closer. So thanks, Nakia. Yes, I am at the ATDC, which is the Advanced Technology Development Center at Georgia Tech, but we have a statewide mission. So I work with entrepreneurs throughout the state. And my specific role is called SBIR STTR Catalyst. And so SBIR is a federal program. It stands for Small Business Innovation Research, and STTR stands for Small Business Technology Transfer. And these are 2 federal economic development programs that are here to help your company advance their technology. It's there to launch and grow startup companies. AJ, Noreen, both have recently received funding from these programs. The beauty of the programs is that it's non-dilutive, so you're not giving up any equity in your company, and you are retaining the IP rights. If you develop it, it's yours. If you are partnering with, say, a university, then you license that technology and then you help commercialize that technology. And the beauty of this is that it's yours and you can make a profit on it. And there have been many successful companies, both here in Georgia as well as nationwide. And my role is to help you understand the programs. There are 11 federal agencies, and each agency from the National Institutes of Health, any of the Defense Department, National Science Foundation, Department of Education, Transportation, EPA, USDA, each one of the agencies had a unique need. And so I'm here to help you understand which agency might be right for your company and your technology and help you through the process if you decide to go forward.
Awesome. Thank you, Connie. Nordine, explain a little bit of who you are, your technology, what it does, and
All right. Yeah, this is working. Perfect. Yeah, so hi everybody. So my name is Nordine Sepki. I am a research engineer at Georgia Tech that has started my company last year. And as Connie said, I just got an SBIR Phase 1 grant from the National Institute of Disability and Independent Living. So I'm a PhD. I was working in the lab. I developed a technology there. And I saw so much value in that technology that's why I decided to pursue commercialization. This was not really something that I wanted to do when I started my PhD, but then, you just work on stuff, you meet people, and Georgia Tech in Atlanta has really good ecosystem to help entrepreneurs and scientists. So I just happened to be like, okay, let's do it. So what I've been working on developing is a wearable body motion tracking system. So that bunch of tracers we can place on the body, can track the movement of different body parts, and use that gesture to control devices. And this is useful for people that are disabled, people that are tetraplegic mostly, so people that cannot use their arms anymore, so they cannot use their smart devices, they cannot even drive their power wheelchair if they have one. They can choose a joystick. So the idea here is that can we tap into any other body gesture that they still have remaining and use that for them to control devices around them. So our IP and all of that is not really a specific thing. It is more about how we brought inertial sensor or new sensing kind of technology, some hardware component that we buy off the shelf and build a software around it, an algorithm, and a way for them to control the devices. So it's a method that takes all of that hardware and software together to deliver a new capabilities for that user population. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it.
awesome. Thank you, Nordine. And Edgar, could you provide a brief overview of your company and what your technology does?
Yes, sir. Can you guys hear me? All right. My name is Edgar Garay. Hello. I was also his roommate when we were doing the PhD, so we lived together for 5 years. So, but anyway, so I'm a microchip designer. So my PhD was on microchip design. I graduated last year, 2 years ago, something like that. While I was graduating, I decided to figure out ways to commercialize the technology that I was working on as a PhD. Basically, the technology is for wireless communication. So we develop a more efficient or energy efficient way to transmit signals over the air. So we partner with semiconductor manufacturing companies and created the first prototypes. And then, I went to California, met with a couple of VCs, and ended up raising close to $5 million. So now we're going into our Series A. We're a team of 12 people. I'm kind of growing the team and looking to commercialize the technology. In terms of patent protection and technology defensibility, we have 4 patents. Some of the patents were from my PhD that we licensed now to Georgia Tech. So we've been kind of in the we kind of experienced the patent process, IP licensing, commercializing, also sub-licensing those patents to other companies. So yeah, I think that's
Awesome. Thank you. So AJ, can you just kind of tell us about what were some of the challenges in the licensing process, and just talk a little bit about not only the challenges but the opportunities that came from that, and just give them a sense of what it means to really take IP and actually license it.
We'll be happy to. Can I just take a poll? How many of you are in the academics?
Oh, quite a few.
How many are IP lawyers here in this room? Quite a few.
Quite a few.
How many of entrepreneurs are thinking of licensing the technology or IP from somewhere?
Oh, wow.
All right. So I think I'm in the right room. So, Naki, I won't say it's a challenge, but I think it's one of those things, right? So, as a startup company or as an entrepreneurs, right? So you don't have all those kind of resources that you would have in the corporate world. So, I spent about 25 years in the corporate world. So just pick up the phone and call, you'd get 10 people for anything, right? All the way from manufacturing, the quality, to the regulatory, to IP. If you don't have enough resources inside, you can call somebody outside. Don't worry about the money. But for the startup companies, the biggest issue when you're a startup, you're starting with your sweat equity. You don't have the money, right? So though I have quite a few patents, and I have worked very closely with the legal people in the corporate world, worked with outside legal people as well, but I never been involved in out-licensing or in-licensing the technology, or the IPs for that matter. So when I chose to license the technology from Clemson University, I had a benefit because my co-founder is in Clemson University. I knew about the technology, but I really didn't know what the process means. So one thing that I did was basically I leveraged my network. So whether it's in the universities and otherwise, so kind of call people, say, hey, I'm thinking of licensing the technology. What do I need to know, right? Where do I start? And believe me, there are a lot of people who are willing to give free advice, charging absolutely nothing, because they really want to help the entrepreneurs. So all those aspiring entrepreneurs, I want you to keep in my mind. So just pick up the phone, call people. So then I guess, decided to work with the CURF, which is the Clemson University Research Foundation, expressed the interest that I want to license the technology, and they showed, okay, so here's what it takes for you guys to license the technology. I had absolutely no clue. Is it a fair deal, no fair deal? But I knew that this is very critical. So, and then, I reached out to one of my friend who had some legal counsel. He said, go ahead and call him. Don't worry about the money. I will take care of the money. But he was not an expert in licensing the technology, but he was a good legal person to give me some general idea. So I think I would say the challenge for me was that, the terms and the conditions that they're putting out, it's a 15-page contract, initial draft document. Do I really understand as a scientist or as an entrepreneur each and every word? No. But I knew for sure that the universities, when they, or anybody who's out-licensed the technology, they just don't come up with the terms. They have looked at some standard protocols, they looked at standard practices. They would not come up with some outrageous expectations. So I think part of it is just you need to trust the process. You just need to know the people. You just need to feel comfortable. But I think the biggest challenge for me was being uncomfortable. How do I make myself comfortable and say that, okay, this is the right deal? But having said that, I think those things can be overcome if you have enough network, talk to the people, whether it's an ATDC, a Tech Alpha Data, or your own network, people will help you out. So I think that's a short answer to your question.
Thank you. Edgar, what advice would you give a small business considering licensing as a growth strategy?
Yeah, so I'll tell you, for example, for us, right? So our go-to-market strategy is to build products. That's the end goal.
Mm-hmm.
But building microchips and semiconductor products, it's extremely expensive. So the first step for us is to sub-license the technology to bigger companies that have the capital, the operational experience, and the execution experience to take that IP and mass produce it. So it's different to produce 100 prototypes to, 10 million microchips a month, right? So that's a huge step for us. So, you really have to look for partners that can sub-license your technology, right? But that in the future are not going to be competitors to your markets. So that's kind of a good way to see it. For example, we're in the process to sub-license our technology to a company that is not interested in making semiconductor products, but systems, right? Overall systems. So, in the future, when we get into the market with our products, they're never going to compete with us, right? So that's extremely important, because at the end of the day, whether you hold the IP rights, it's who has more money to execute, and they can compete better in price, in relationships that they have with manufacturers, and so I think that's one of the ways to protect yourself. Also, looking at the terms like exclusivity, length of the sub-license that you want to provide, the royalty of that creates a healthy revenue stream, and those details, and also the field of use, right? You probably want to be very clear about the how specific is your license to that company.
Right.
And
Right. So with that question, let's pick up on that field of use. So Connie, and when you're sitting down, going over conversations with these scientists to talk about, or any business owner, about applying for IP, talk about some of the things that you discuss and why it's important in terms of the layout and how the reviewer is going to look at it, and just kind of tie that back to how important it is to really make sure that the IP and what you're talking about is very real clear.
Yeah. So one of the marked differences of the SBIR and STTR programs versus other academic grants is it has to have a high commercial potential. And high commercial potential means they want you to make a lot of money. Again, it's economic development. If your company grows, you're going to support the economy and grow the economy. So how can you have something with high commercial potential is you have to have something that's disruptive and unique. And so you can't just say, I'm going to create the next smartphone. How many smartphones do we already have on the market? So you don't need another smartphone on the market. You need something new, innovative. So that's looking at that IP and how unique is that IP going to be? Is it something that is going to be a standalone product? Is it going to be something that needs to be embedded in someone else's product? If it needs to be embedded in their product, do they want it, first of all? And second of all, then how are you going to capture that IP and get the licensing rights? So you need to make sure that you have a good relationship legally with any partners you set up. Don't just say, well, they're nice to me, so I'm going to let them input their product, my product into their product. So make sure there's clear IP, and you have to describe that when you are applying for funding. You have to describe any relationships you're going to have and your commercial potential to that federal agency. So I want it to be disruptive technology, and I want you to have that there's a market out there, that it's not, oh, I'm just going to sell one of them, yay, but I'm going to sell many, many, many of them, and then it's going to help my company grow even more that way.
Awesome. Thank you for
can
that.
I say some additional
Yeah, absolutely.
comments? Yeah, so another comment that I wanted to say, when you're licensing IP from, let's say, a university like Georgia Tech to your company, or from any other university to your actual startup, you have to understand whether you want to be a VC-backed startup or you want to bootstrap, and that depends on the IP, depending on how much cash you need or how much money do you need to create that business, right? And one of the first things that I did, and I think a lot of people do, is that they talk to a lot of VCs to make sure that the IP licensing that you're getting are VC friendly, right? So I can tell you that if you have a license from a university and the royalty that you have to pay them, it's 10-20% per product or per commercial product, you're probably never going to get VC funding, right? There are also standards in terms of how much royalty you have to pay per market, what's the field of use, and what's the exclusivity, the time of exclusivity, and all those things. So if you have a startup, you're looking for funding, but you also want to license the IP, talk to a lot of investors to make sure that you can see, the whole kind of, IP, licensing world.
Right.
Yeah.
Awesome. So one question, and we'll go ahead and switch over to our other panelists. Nordine, so can you share any tips or advice to help others to bring their innovation to market? Because I know that you all were relentless. I don't care if it was morning, night, day. You were always in the courtyard working on your interface, just like relentless on it. What can you share? Besides just got to be resilient, but just share some tips in terms of that can help them in bringing their innovations to market.
Well, I think it's kind of, I would say, obvious and simple, but it's to find the right people, build a small team with different skills, because this is actually something that I'm struggling with with my company. Is we're only two of us, and we are two engineers from Georgia Tech. So, if we had a more business-minded person, or somebody also that has a bit of relationship partnership, they know how to work with hospitals or the medical field, it would enable us to go much faster. So, trying to get the right team at the beginning, that helps a lot, because that will also help with investors. Investors are also looking at the team. Are you going to be the right team to get that product into the market? So that's really, I think, important. I don't know if this would respond to a question, but something I have learned is to get out there and talk to people, especially the end users or stakeholders, not just the end users, but stakeholders of the thing that you're developing, trying to put in the market. Because I realized from my experience, we were trying to develop something that was way too complicated. And when we went and we started to talk to the VA, actually, they'd say, hey guys, what you're doing is really great, awesome, but if you can just do this one thing, this tiny thing, which is a really dumbed down version of what you are developing, we want to buy that. Right. And then we just realized that, okay, we just have to do this and we can go to market much faster and start generating revenue, which will help us get investors and so on and so forth. Right. So that will be also my advice, is just get out there, start talking to your stakeholders as soon as you can. They will help you know what they are really looking for.
Awesome, thank you. We're going to transition to our other panelists, thank them, and get our other folks to come up, our other panelists to come up. But as our other panelists are coming up, I have 5 faculty members that are visiting me from Egypt. They are faculty, they have IP. I want them to stand up. And they're spending a whole month with me here at Georgia Tech. They're amazing scientists. They've got IP that they're working on, and we've got some stuff that we're trying to help. So thank you, team, for being here. Sometimes when I pull up to Georgia Tech's campus, I'm like, they actually pay me to do this? Because sometimes it does not feel like work, in that regard. So, but anyway, so we've got another set of amazing panelists, but I want to take the opportunity for you all to just give a brief overview, who you are, your company, your technology, and then we'll jump into it, and then we'll jump into some questions and some Q&A and chatting a little bit.
Hello, everyone. My name is Avas Bajwa. I'm just going to share a very quick story that happened 6 years ago. My mom came to visit me, and she's a diabetic patient. She wanted to get an eye exam because every diabetic patient needs an eye exam. We took an appointment with the doctor. The waiting time was 4 months. That was just the first question for me, why? Then I look at the statistics. 37 million Americans are diabetic, 96 million are pre-diabetic, and only 3,000 retina specialists are available to do the eye exams. I thought maybe there can be a better way. ideas comes in mind, but until you don't take those ideas to the finishing line, you are still in a vacuum. I'm an artificial intelligence engineer. I thought of, let's have an AI algorithms, do the initial eye exams, and that was the first start of my product. I took some of the data sets and I developed an algorithm that started detecting eye diseases, especially diabetic retinopathy, within 30 seconds without the need of a doctor. In 2020, I thought of registering a company as a startup company. I registered a company in Atlanta. I deployed that software, and I'm gonna share one of the secret. And I'm an artificial intelligence engineer, but a little different perspective in licensing a technology. You have to give your technology or your innovation to the actual end customer as soon as possible. So when I looked at the US market, it's a very highly regulated market, and there is a need of this technology in other parts of the world. So I took that to Asia. I went to few charity hospitals and I said, I want to evaluate that and I want to help you guys. Can you just do as an experimentation? I deployed the technology in 2021 in Asian hospitals too, and they deployed the technology and they evaluated in 2022 December, 120,000 people were diagnosed using my technology in hospital, and 56 were prevented from going blind after giving injections. That data I used, I came back to the US. I applied in different companies. Number one, I got ATDC, and I'm very excited to see my friend Nakia today because I'm meeting him first time in person. And Coney, and they've helped us, and we got approved as an ATDC company. NVIDIA accepted us, they are sponsoring us. We are NVIDIA Inception startup. AWS, Amazon Web Services, they invested in our company $220,000 cloud credit, so all of our artificial intelligence is for free. Thank you to AWS. We applied in CDL, Creative Destruction Lab. We got graduated from them. Then all with our internal in-house money, we were able to sign $1.6 million contract. That's a 3-year agreement this year. So we are very blessed. And now we are bringing this technology to the US. Now every primary care, basically we have a device, camera. That camera company is a handheld camera. So they integrate with our AI. And now we actually bringing this technology to primary cares where all diabetic people go. And they can do an eye exam within 30 seconds. And also we have an assistive AI where human and AI will work together. So now we are deploying this. So now talking about the IP structure, I'm very blessed that I applied 3 patents on that. One is non-provisional, and we are very soon will be having the results. Apart from that, the licensing stuff, one other advice, there are a lot of companies, they offer free services on the initial roadmap when you have startups. So we got funded by Fenwick, and they are having all of, because here's the challenge, I'm an engineer. I don't know much about how to business, how to commercialize, so we need to get some help. Now we got all this licensing done. We have very to the point and very legal terminology contracts developed by Fenwick, and now we are licensing our technology in multiple hospitals. So that's my short story. I'll be here to answer all questions. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Jason, same question. Tell us about your technology, brief overview. You guys run an amazing company.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So my name's Jason Crow. I'm the CTO for Stratus Labs. Our company is a medical device company that focuses on respiratory monitoring. We're an ATDC company, signature ATDC company. Oh, am I low? There you go. Oh, just closer. We're an ATDC signature company. Actually, we're about to graduate this year, and so we're very proud of that. This is actually my second ATDC company that I've been involved with. I was also involved with CardioMEMS, a previous company earlier on. And so we just love the ecosystem that has been created by the ATDC group and all of the surrounding companies that are now helping out in that particular area, because it really, greatly benefited our company. Our device is a wearable biosensor that collects respiratory sounds, lung sounds, and also monitors motion. So we're able to get lung sound information and motion information. And what we do is we take that information, transmit it up to our cloud-based servers, and within our cloud-based servers, we have this rich data set now of a lot of really good physiological information about people who have some kind of respiratory disease. And then we use machine learning AI algorithms to go in there and extract the physiological information out and provide that information to our customers. And a lot of our customers have very specialized things that they want to look at. Our first market that we've gone into is pharmaceutical clinical trials. One of the things as we were developing this product, we know there was just a broad range of sources. I mean, COVID was going on, and we definitely could work with COVID, but we had to take a look at, what the niche market would be. Who is asking for this kind of information? And we found out pharmaceutical companies are really looking for objective information about the performance of their drugs. And so we are currently in multiple phase 1 and phase 2 clinical trials. We're preparing for some phase 3 drug studies with a variety of pharmaceutical companies. And what we're able to bring them now is information about the performance of the drugs, objective information. To date, before this, they relied on patient questionnaires. Are you coughing more? Are you wheezing more? It's very subjective. I mean, I don't know how many times I coughed today, But what we can do is we can count coughs, we can count wheezes, we can provide them that information over time. Not only that, but we can also say, hey, this person's coughing when they're very active, but not coughing a whole lot when they're not. Or when they're sitting up, some things are happening in their lungs. And so we're able to give them a wide depth of information that they've never had before. And so, we're working within that particular market, and then we are expanding out. We're doing clinical trials now where we're going to expand out to, the obvious one, asthma, and then cystic fibrosis and COPD.
Awesome. Thank you. And quick note, why you should do that, you should look at NIDA, opioid respiratory depression. And so NIDA is got some funding out, just saying, sidebar, through NIH. Ken, go ahead.
Okay. My name is Ken Wright. I'm with Novak. And you'll notice a lot of the panelists have mentioned that one aspect of their business they don't know a lot about, whether it's the business side or the engineering side or whatever. So just to explain, I'm a retired plant manager at a manufacturing plant. I work almost my entire career as automotive, OEM supply to BMW, Mercedes, Honda, and Nissan. But for some reason, I came up with an idea on how to kill COVID, totally unrelated. So I have no healthcare background, no background in medicine, but I came up with an idea. Now, luckily, in my community, I'm from Rome, Georgia, we had 2 large hospitals, a large medical clinic, and I knew all the doctors, nurses, lots of medical professionals, so I ran the idea by them. And consistently, everyone would say, that'll work. And nobody said, that won't work. So I reached out to Georgia Tech, actually, because I was plant manager at a manufacturing facility. And when this came out with COVID, Georgia Tech Manufacturing Extension Partnership, John Zegers reached out to me because they were looking for manufacturing companies to produce, respirators, ventilators, masks, whatever, just to see if we could. Well, in turn, I reached back out to him and said, hey, I've got this idea for a product. I'll give it to you. I was tired of people getting sick, being hospitalized and dying. I didn't want any money. I just wanted to give it away. Just, can you find a company to produce this? Being naive, I thought that could happen. Well, that cannot happen. You need a business plan. You need a prototype. You need a provisional patent. You need all these things. And even our state representative set me up with a meeting with Brian Kemp because, the urgency. Same thing. You need to get a patent. So long story short, I have a provisional patent, 2 non-provisional patents. Reached out to Georgia Tech again, and they actually produced a prototype. So with any of our panelists or with anyone in the group, if there's things you're lacking, there are resources. And I'll say that's probably been the most important thing in my development of my product. It's a personal protective device that as you inhale air, it brings air into an environment, I can't say too much, it kills viral particles. So you don't inhale any live viral particles. So it can't attach to lungs, it can't replicate, you can't transmit, it actually kills. And the great part is, it not only kills COVID, but SARS, MERS, H1N, all respiratory viruses, even influenza. But the point I was making is, by reaching out to resources that are available through Georgia Tech, they connected me with GCMI, which is Global Center for Medical Innovation, MedTech Center for Excellence, and of course ATDC. So there are resources out there that if you do have an idea and there's things that you're lacking knowledge from one aspect of your business, reach out to some of these resources. You know, you need to, because don't be ashamed to admit weakness in an area. I had no healthcare medical background, and there are resources to help you do that. GCMI actually was probably one of the best initial conversations because they prepared me. If it's a medical device, it's for a specific medical condition, this is going to be a 4 to 5 year journey. Now, it's hard for me to take because I was tired of people getting sick and dying, but it's a 4 to 5 year journey. And I'm 3 years into it, so, maybe a year or two we'll be good to go. But we made a lot of progress. Like I said, we'll have a prototype that Georgia Tech did through their capstone development program, their design program. There's actually a company looking now to produce this, just to buy the whole thing, my intellectual property. They've got the technical specs and actually produce it. So that may be the quickest way to do it. At this point, it is a wearable device that you would wear that prevents you from getting any respiratory virus.
Awesome. Thank you, Ken. And need I say, non-scientist, plant manager with IP, and you're working with the university. I'm just saying, So, all right. So really quick, because we got about 5 minutes for this panel is up. So we got to lightning round these questions. What advice would you give a entrepreneur who is thinking about maybe working with you, or potentially they may have an adjacent technology but might be thinking about licensing something that you're doing? Talk a little bit about that. What would you give advice around that?
Yeah, 5 minutes is not fair, man.
Yeah.
I think, number one thing is that teamwork. I mean, you alone cannot do anything. This is one of the hard learning I have. I have my co-founder, she's sitting here. She's a doctor. I'm an AI engineer, so she's the doctor, so we are making this team. Second thing is that I have a panel that is from Cleveland Clinic, so they joined us as a board, so we are just together, we're doing that. Now, there are a lot, this is the whole ecosystem. That's one of the things I learned in that startup. Once you go on the road, you find out that you're not alone, of course. There are a lot of integrations with other companies, other entrepreneurs, they wanna work with you. You even start picking the phone, go to your LinkedIn profile, find all the people you worked in last 5 years. This is the magic. I found 7 connection. They got me landing in a contract that we are actually signing from my previous workers that I never thought they're in healthcare or they worked. They gave me connections. So you are the most important thing, and I'll just try to summarize because other panelists are here. The most important thing in the entrepreneurship is talk. Talk to people even you don't expect they can help you. Make connections. Think about what is your expansion, what is the ecosystem, how you can expand, and don't hesitate to pick up a phone, call. Thank you.
Awesome. So this last question is for you, Jason. What are some of the greatest challenges in protecting your own IP? Given, the market share, the challenge everyone's trying to address, what is the greatest challenge in protecting your own IP?
Yeah, I find the greatest challenge is really, protecting your IP is very resource intensive. It takes a lot of work, a lot more work than you think. And one of the things that you really need to do is have a IP strategy that not only looks at how you're covering everything, but also takes into account, how much money you have to spend, how much time and effort that you are going to be putting into this. I've been very fortunate to have teams of engineers that, are very good at coming up with new IP, but you can't protect everything.
Right.
And so what you're going to want to be able to do is have a very nice plan such that you can filter out, prioritize, and make sure that you can move forward and execute the strategy with the resources that you have.
Awesome. Thank you. And Ken, as we close, any wisdom you would leave us with as you made your transition to being a scientific entrepreneur? Any wisdom that you can give us as we close here?
The wisdom is you partner with great entities, and I'll say once again, Georgia Tech, building the prototype. They've got a great program. I established my provisional patent before I participated in the capstone design program, but they've been doing this forever, and they've got a great program. So up front, they'll tell you, the students, advisors, graduate assistants, that they sign NDAs so that you're protected. They sign over ownership of the intellectual property is yours. It goes to the person submitting the project. So there's no danger of anybody stealing anything like that. But all that's up front. They tell you that, and that's really the partnerships have been
Right.
probably the most important thing that I do.
Right. Thank you. So I appreciate y'all listening to this panel. Don't clap just yet. I'm about to give y'all some wise advice here. So if you have an innovation or a technology or something that you're thinking about getting developed, Georgia Tech Senior Capstone, these are students that will now, sometimes they'll take your project on for free, sometimes there's a cost associated to that, but they will build, design, prototype. They will, as that's part of their project, their design. If you need to code something, software, build something, these students, you just submit your project, and they'll let you know if it's something that they want to work on, if there's going to be a cost. But even if there is a cost, it's nothing nowhere you would pay on the market. And they were able to help Ken in doing that. So thank you again for my friends. These are all my friends in terms of this panel. And thank you all for being on here and take advantage of the USPTO services and resources. I am a strong advocate of those resources. There's nothing worse than you having a great idea, you not protecting it. And I tell every entrepreneur, it's not who has the idea, it's who first files, okay? And every attorney will tell you that. So you need to protect your idea, protect what you're working on. And I promise you, some of you are doing some proprietary IP process and do not know that you're doing it. Sit down with an attorney, walk through your workflow of your business, your strategy, tell them some of the things that you're doing, because it very well may need to be protected, right, in that regard. And I'm grateful for you all time. Thank you so much, and we'll turn it back over to you guys. Thank you.